Welcome back to the brain injury discussion. This is Jay, and of course, looking forward to this episode. We're going to be talking about games. Feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have a topic you want us to cover, or maybe you have a favorite game. Put it in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. We're going to be looking at a few different articles about gaming and brains and how it is used in the rehabilitation sense. And like with most things, sources will be in the description below. All right, the first article was published in Brain Sciences. It is titled, Does Video Gaming Have Impacts on the Brain? Evidence from a Systematic Review. They find that, you know, people love games. People love the enjoyment, the activity of participating in something that is not only just enjoyable, but also has structures and rules. Um, and they find that, this is something that's fairly new and that, should definitely be taken into consideration because this is being discussed, this is being studied, this is being researched. And this article really focused in on the MRI scans. Um, and they really realize that okay, they're starting to look at more than neuroplasticity, which neuroplasticity is usually associated with the brain's ability to repair itself. So if we look at this very complex structure that has multiple different avenues, of course, a blow to the head will cause some sort of damage. The brain starts to repair itself, and other organs do rehabilitate themselves, like the lungs. But the brain, it takes a lot longer because it's very complex. And so they were looking at, what happens with the neurorehabilitation and the neuroplasticity, and they really found that you know, adaptation is kind of the neuroplasticity word, and they were using that in the context of games, right? They were using it for the learning, for memorizing, trying to make sure that, yeah, you're following the rules. And although they note that, a lot of this data is inconclusive, again, like this is 2025, up to 2025 that were found, and they find that, yes, a lot of it is inconclusive at this time, but they do find that there is neuroplasticity, especially with the adaptation of the brain. And so we can look at this and think, okay, maybe there's not enough information, maybe there's not enough studies, but the role of making a game out of rehabilitation would cause some sort of a internal or brain activity that invests one into it. So again, this is not necessarily just about the rehabilitation side of games, but also what it does to the brain. A 2023 article published in BMC Psychiatry, Development of Serious Game-Based Cognitive Rehabilitation System for Patients with Brain Injury, they really find that it is encouraging, that is good, to encourage patients to engage in these like rehabilitative games. And there's a lot of momentum behind this because then the person who is participating in these games can really, be a part of this. They have an investment, they look forward to this, and is a more motivating factor. Um, Again, this is not always the case, but they find, and in this article they note that yeah, it has an advantage, the quality and efficacy. But they really find that it has a lot of personalization, use at home in remote areas. So where we are located in the northern neck is very rural, and getting to a certain specialist, for example, for us in it would probably be Richmond, Newport News, Fredericksburg. That is, over an hour's drive, depending on where you're located in the Northern Neck. But, if this is where we can send it home with them, and they can do it at home too, and not only just have it, but also utilize it and be able to do so in the context of their own home, um, that could lead to higher chances of success. Now, and because this is still a fairly recent phenomenon, it hasn't been totally studied from end to end. There's still a lot of data that is yet to be consumed, but there's a lot of promise there. and making it fun and engaging for the individual, that really does seem to have some form of promise there, especially in these rural, remote locations. And of course, cost may be a prohibiting factor, but if you could do this, for example, on the phone, on a tablet, on a computer, or maybe you get sent home with one, that might be able to save you the cost and the time of transportation. In another article titled "The Effects of Video Game Therapy on Balance and Attention in Chronic Ambulatory Traumatic Brain Injury, an Exploratory Study," this was published in BMC Neurology in 2017. They found that video game therapy, or VGT, as a new intervention, could really help those neurological outcomes, and it works on kind of a reward based learning approach. And that's what they call it, a reward learning approach, where um, you do a thing, you get a reward for it. Of course, we can go into the details later on about the serotonin responses as well as the other chemical responses that happen in the brain, as kind of a happy signal, as kind of the reward center of the brain. And what they're looking at is, yes, we can utilize this in the rehabilitation sense. And so what they find is that, yes, gaming consoles and other kind of technology that allows you to do the therapy is actually of lower cost for a high cost injury. Traumatic brain injury, acquired brain injury therapy, that is very expensive these days. And this is a means, they find it as a low cost means of delivering that therapy through virtual reality. And like I said earlier, this is a cost saving. This could be cost saving. This could be not only cost saving but time saving. Like time is valuable too, especially when someone might have to go to work, someone might have to provide for their family, have to provide for other things, and this is something that could be delivered at the person's home instead of just at a clinical facility. Um, and of course, cost is usually a prohibitive factor in neurorehabilitation, especially with neurological sequelae or the after effects. And so this is kind of a new area of study. Now, again, um, they looked at patients with traumatic brain injury, and they did a 6-week video game therapy study on the kind of the balance, mobility, attention, the different aspects of what the brain has to do. And of course, promising, but it was a small sample size and it wasn't very long. So again, sample size of a study does matter. And this is not necessarily exhaustive, but it does point to some promise that yes, according to what they were able to find, they were able to see that yes, there is some promise in this and it does show some effectiveness. And, not necessarily blaming them for the small sample size because this is still fairly new. Um, we look at this and it's like, yes, a lot of people have these consoles already, or if not, they're not necessarily cost prohibitive. And especially with technology, I mean, we all have, or at least I would say most of us have one of these, right? So it would only make sense to encourage good therapy, good recovery at home with what you already have. And I think that is where, some of the future of rehabilitation really comes in. And so when we talk about gaming in the modern day, we also need to talk about virtual reality. 2023 article titled "Use of Virtual Reality in Patients with Acquired Brain Injury," a systematic review, Journal of Clinical Medicine. Oh my, this is going to be good. They really point out that yes, it is a simulated practice. They're using their hands, they're using their eyes, they're using all their sensory things. And, obviously, computer generated is not real, but this really does, like, allow for a lot of opportunity in the rehabilitation space. And they find that it's economical. So instead of having to go, for example, for us in the Northern Neck, instead of having to drive an hour and and some change to Richmond, and then do the therapy, and then come back after another hour and a half drive, which could be an all-day ordeal. This is an ability to bring that therapy home, and of course. They really do note that yes, you can do this at home. You can do this in low internet areas. You can do this, in low cost, and it's efficient. But we also have to mention that yes, this is still being studied, and this could be part of the future of therapy for acquired brain injury. They also note that there's improvements in like the motor functions and of course the cognitive functions as well. And we talk about that kind of reward based thing, right? Where you do something, you get a reward for it, or you do something and you get the secondary actions. And just like with real life things, you could do this in the virtual space where you do something and there's a consequence for it. And of course, consequences can be good, bad, indifferent, whatever. Um, but there is a consequence to what is going on. And so I find that very interesting that, we can utilize technology for, rehabilitation. And there's already a lot of technology utilized for rehabilitation. And it's still fairly new. So it's still being studied. Like our previous talk with hyperbarics and other different therapies like Eastern medicine, acupuncture, acupressure, and all of that is still being studied, and we don't know as much about it yet because it is still fairly fresh in the modern medical space. So let's do a quick review. That first article I noted, they said yes, this is still fairly new. Sample sizes are still small, but games do have an effect on the brain, and especially with the neurorehabilitation, the other like plasticity things, all that takes into account. The second article, this game-based cognitive rehabilitation, this can be used as a effective approach. We're causing that action that inspires the consequence. And again, consequences, might lead to the next step. And again, this is kind of a motivational thing too. The third article from 2017, they say, yeah, this could be effective. And they really think that this could be used not necessarily in just, what they think, how the brain processes things, but also for the cognitive and other neurological sequelae that pertains to the actual brain injury and how to recoup and recover from them. And as a low cost measure, this could be something that not only is it low cost for the individual, but it's also fun, it's engaging, and of course, with many things, fun and engaging go hand in hand. Also, when you're in fun, you tend to get invested in those things. And I tend to think that if you start making it a game where there are structures, there are rules, um, and there's also safety precautions in place, uh, people start to really have more investment into it, and they'll take it not only seriously, but also put themselves into it. And that's where it really comes down to. It's like, yes, this is rewarding. This is, causing those consequences, or consequences as used in the term of this is what happens after you perform an action. And so when we look at this, the technology of the future when it comes to rehabilitation may be home based in part because of video games. And so that's why we shouldn't necessarily just rule them out as just, a game. Maybe you take something that's fun and you can turn it around for the betterment, for rehabilitation, for neuroplasticity. Um, Options, the future is endless. We don't know what's going to come in the future, but this could be something that really helps those with brain injuries. But again, running low on time. Of course, if you like, subscribe, comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Tell me what your favorite game is. Card game, board game, computer game, video game. Um, and you know what? Every game you play engages your brain. But with that being said, everyone take care and have a wonderful day.